So, you came today to learn about Israel stuff, you're in the right class. If you came to learn about something else, you're in the wrong class.
Well, you never know where it's going to go.
True. All right, so this topic has been something that a lot of people have had a lot of questions about. And I want this to be a discussion. Unlike a sermon, it'd be weird if we had a dialogue in a sermon. But in a class like this is the setting to talk about these things. So I do encourage you guys, if you have questions about it, something you want to talk about, if I'm not going to address it today, then maybe we can talk about it next week. But I also want to say I am by no means the subject matter expert on all things Israel and all this stuff. I don't know about you guys, but have you realized that the media spins things quite a bit? Have you ever figured that out yet? You know, it seems like if you're pro-Israel and everything, especially if you go on a YouTube feed or whatever, man, you're going to be fed all the stuff that Hamas and Palestine and all these things are horrible, wretched people, and they're doing awful things. And if you're pro-Hamas or pro-freedom for this, then you're going to be fed all the horrible atrocities that the Jews are doing. And it just seems like we can't get straight answers. And so I'm going to try not to go down those roads too much and keep it really focused on understanding some things biblically about Israel's situation, about Israel and prophecy, and about all of that, okay? So, with that being said here, let's see, I need to go back here. Let's go back up here. Let's go to this one. Let's go to this one, because this one is the beginning, not the end.
Yay.
It's the same slide, but it's actually at the beginning rather than the end. I'm like, what is my next slide? There's nothing there. Okay. So, when did the war in Israel start?
Which one?
Good question.
1945.
The most recent one that we are aware of, it started on October 7, 2023. And when Hamas came in and attacked Israel, I don't think anybody disagrees that what happened that day was pretty atrocious. As video footage has come out and reports of all the things that were done, it was very sad. And
especially the women.
yeah.
Babies.
Yeah, it seems unconscionable. It really does when you see some of this, which I think is what shocked the world so much. It's one thing if soldiers kill other soldiers on the battlefield. You expect that, but when you see innocent people who are just coming in and this is all happening, it's crazy. It says over 1,300 Israelis have been killed and close to 12,000 are wounded. 129 hostages as of the date of this information. 129 hostages are still being held by Hamas. More than 12,500 rockets have been fired at Israeli towns and cities. Israeli families are huddled in bomb shelters. As of December 27th, the Israeli Defense Force, which is, if you see it in the media or whatever, it's called IDF. That means Israeli Defense Force. It says that it has killed some 8,000 Hamas terrorists in Gaza and another 1,000 during and immediately after the October 7th attacks. It is estimated that Hamas's terror army is comprised of 24 battalions with a total fighting force of some 30,000 people. So you think about that. So far, 12 Hamas battalions in northern Gaza are close to being destroyed. 4 more are believed to operate in central Gaza and the rest in southern Gaza, where the majority of Hamas's leadership is believed to be hiding since the war began. So I give you some of those things, but I'm using words, Hamas, Gaza, whatever else, that maybe for some of you you're like, I know exactly what you mean. And others you're like, I hear these words, but I'm still not 100% sure what all that stuff means. So that's what I wanted to just start with a bit this morning. Who are the Palestinians? So, I guess I'll ask a question. Who are the Palestinians?
Who are they not? They're not Israelites.
No.
They're
Okay.
not part of the 12
I
tribes.
think they're descendants of Ishmael, aren't
Yeah. In today's.
they? Okay, sorry.
No.
Open up a can, but-
No, but that's something we're gonna be talking about probably next week. We're gonna get into that. In case you didn't hear it, Cheryl says, descendants of Ishmael. And so you had Isaac, and Jacob, and I'm sorry, Isaac was the other son of Abraham. Remember, Abraham had Ishmael. But we're going to talk about, remember, Abraham had the sons of Keturah.
Mhm.
Abraham had sons with Keturah. In fact, one of the sons of Keturah is a son by the name of Midian. You remember the Midianites?
That's right.
Yeah. So Abraham's descendants are not just limited to Ishmael and Isaac. There's actually other sons that are out there. Okay. So anyway,
In today's geopolitical system, what we can remember now, I was born just before Israel became a nation, four states. So I missed the first-hand news here. But after World War II, now I can remember when most people referred to the area that is now Israel, people still called it Palestine when I was a kid.
right.
Well, actually what happened is the United Nations and other countries, we are told, out of guilt, which sounds reasonable, they carved out a section of what used to be Israel and gave it back to the Jews, pushed the Palestinians out, which was a bad deal for everybody. The Palestinians, that wasn't fair to them really, but they wanted to side with the Arabs, which turned into another war, and they lost.
Yeah.
And in 1967, they lost again. And in the early 70s, they lost a third time. So, but the Palestinians feel like their land was stolen from them. The Israelis feel like they have a right to be there. And they've hated each other for generations to start with.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's no easy answer.
Yeah, and prior to the establishment of the modern Israeli state, there were Jews living in Palestine.
Yes.
Like Jews and people of Palestinian descent living together and had for centuries and millennia.
Yeah.
And even the term Palestine, it's a Roman word, if I remember correctly. It's a term that Rome imposed on that area.
Right.
Oh.
Right. Right. It's not necessarily, it's not like that's an ancient term of Palestinian. It was
Right, an ancient people group.
Correct. So the Palestinians, when you think about who are the Palestinians, it's actually a bit of a hodgepodge, which goes back to what you talked about. You have the descendants of Ishmael. Now, the descendants of Ishmael are the Arabs. Okay, it is of Arab descent. But if you think about it like this, not all Arabs are descendants of Ishmael. Okay, does that make sense? So you have this hodgepodge of things. One of the other things is one of the things you'll see is, which some of the DNA stuff, this is interesting, we may have to get some more chairs. Some of the DNA stuff has confirmed that some of the modern Palestinians are actually descendants of the Canaanites.
Oh, I'm sure you
I
are.
was waiting for that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
So if you think about it like this, you remember when God told the nation of Israel, I want you to go into the land of Israel, go into the land. He says, I want you to wipe them out. Because if you don't wipe them out, they will be thorns in your flesh. How's that working out for him today?
Guess what?
Well, and you also think about if Abraham hadn't gotten impatient and taken Hagar,
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
wouldn't be there either.
Yeah.
Now, I have been told that the
Yeah.
three wives of Abraham were a Shemite, a Hamite, and a,
Japhethite.
thank you, Japhethite. Now, I'm not sure it's true, but
Well,
that's worth.
I've heard that same thing. So for those who don't know what those words mean, if you remember the sons of Noah, remember Noah had 3 sons, and one was Ham, one was Shem, one was Japheth. The Shemite would be, you've heard of the Semitic people? That's the Shem, it really is that phrase, Shem. So the Jews are not the only Semitics, but those who are the descendants of Shem are called the Semitic people. Okay, so that's the phrase that it goes back to that. But so I want you to see, this goes back to what Wade was talking about. I just so happen to have that map.
We need those.
Yep. So I love maps. Let's see. There we go. All right. So in 1947, this was post World War II. Okay, I know you're staring at this for just a sec. We're gonna go back. Let me say this. Back in the 1800s, there was a movement that began, and it was a movement called Zionism. Have you ever heard of Zionism? Okay, the idea behind Zionism was that it was an idea that Israel should be a self-determining people. Israel should be able to be their own people. If you think about it, where were all the Jews living? They're scattered in all the empires. They were living in Russia. They were living in Europe. They were living in probably far reaches of China or Asia, whatever else. They were scattered. We know that the Jews went to India. There's Jews living in America. So the Jews were scattered. They didn't have a place. And so Zionism came along and said there was a man who, and I forget his first name, but he came along and he said, I believe the nation of Israel should be a state again. We should make a place where the Jews can be a self-determined people. They can make their own decisions. They don't have to be in somebody else's land. They can come back. And so this movement was picking up pace. More and more Jews from around the world were coming back to Israel. And there was this return. And so the Jews didn't return just in 1947. The Jews had been returning since the 1800s and early 1900s. They had been making their way back. But it was a little bit here, a little bit there. But they were the foreigners in Palestine. Okay? They were the foreigners. But gradually there came this, more and more people came. Going back to what was said about World War II, whether it was guilt or whatever else, the feeling was, now's our time to do it. Now is our time to actually give them the land that they deserve. And so, in 1947, the United Nations drew up what they called a partition plan. And so you can't really see this. I wanted you to get the whole gist of it. Now I'm going to zoom in on the next one a little bit. Oops, wrong way. So this is a little bit. So you've got Lebanon right up in here. So the Lebanese up in the north part. You've got Syria, which is over here. If you remember your maps from the series on Ruth, this would have been where the Moabites were and stuff. This area is called Transjordan, which means on the other side of Jordan. So this is the Transjordan area. This is more of a higher plateau. You've got the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, the Sea of Galilee up here. So, but this is where most of Israel lives. This is kind of a desert wasteland stuff over here. It's not really very fertile at all. But so you have this. So what they determined was they were going to give this. So all the red over here, Palestinians were going to control that. Okay? The blue was going to be controlled by Israel. So blue is Israel, red is Palestine. And then this fancy yellow area was going to be joint control. Now there just so happens to be a relatively major city called Jerusalem that's in the joint control area. I know Ed was just over there. He's crazy, but he was just over touring Israel after the war started. He's a crazy man. Anyway, so he's up on Temple Mount, which is really interesting because Temple Mount is under the control of the Arabs. Which is so bizarre. The Temple Mount is Arabic, but yet step through the gate to come off of Temple Mount, and now you're on Jewish-controlled area. It's these two worlds are very much
In your face.
Yeah, I mean it's like having something holding two opposing magnets together. It's hard, but that's the tension they live in currently. So this was in 1947. How many people look at this and go, "This could be bad"?
Are you kidding?
I don't know how this is all going to work out. Especially when you look over here, a little city called Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is Palestinian controlled. So they have a little city in the middle of all this blue. You can just picture how this is going to go horribly wrong. Well, going back to what Wade talked about, there was a war, 1967. So prior to 1967, you can see this. This was all Palestinian stuff. Here's Jewish. This, I mean, it's not fully detailed like the other one, but you can see this is the nation of Israel doesn't have very much here, right? Okay. Well, the Jews destroyed everybody. So in here, the Lebanese came down to attack them. The Syrians came in. Jordan did. Saudi Arabia, Egypt. They all said, here's our chance to take care of the Jews. We hate them. We don't like them. They shouldn't be here anyway. We're going to wipe them out. Well, they ran into a very formidable force that they were not expecting. And Israel beat the socks off of them. And so, as a result, what's that?
This happened in a week.
Yeah, it was called the 6-Day War. Okay, that's what this is called. In case you've ever heard, this is called the 6-Day War in 1967. And Israel beat the snot out of them, so they said, well, thank you for all the land. You know, I think it's time you leave. You know, we beat you fair and square. Thank you for the land. So they not only, I mean, you can see this over here. This was all controlled by Egypt. So they took this area. They took all of this up in here. They got them off. This is what's called the West Bank. You've heard of the West Bank here? They took them, kicked them out of the West Bank. They even kicked them out of, this is called, here, this little thing here called the Gaza Strip. So if you've heard the terms Gaza Strip, that's this little bitty strip there, and then this section here is called the West Bank. So those are the two main areas that they're fighting over. Well, Israel says, thank you very much, I'm just going to take it. Well, this didn't sit so well in the international community. So land returned to Egypt and Syria 1974 through 1982. So eventually they're like, well, I guess we'll give it back. So this went back, and so now they basically have where they are now. They keep Tel Aviv, Jews keep Tel Aviv, but they gave them back the Gaza Strip and they gave them back the West Bank. Notice here they took some of this. This is the Golan Heights. Maybe you've heard that. Those are the three main areas. So the Golan Heights is up here. The Jews said, we're going to keep this section right here. We'll give you this, but they returned this to Syria. But things changed after this. And so now, this is today. So this was Israel before the 6-Day War. Just, the red under Israeli control after the 6-Day War was all of this. But now you have, so this is Israel, full Palestinian control. All they have is Gaza. That's it. Full Palestinian control is only Gaza. So all the Palestinians currently are living here, of which there's about 2 million. Whereas in this... Yes, hon?
Question. So I know I came in late, sorry.
It's okay.
But the West Bank, thank you, Eric. When we went to the river,
Yes.
Jordan River, on the other side, they said was the Palestinian, right? Is that the West Bank?
We were driving by the West Bank as we were going up there, but we were driving through that area. On the other side would have been, see, this is Amman.
So that was the other side, the Amman.
Jordan, yes. On the other side of the Jordan would have been Jordan, the country of Jordan. But even when we were traveling through that, remember when we went to Bethlehem?
You were inside the
We
West
were
Bank.
inside the shared controlled area.
Which is why, that's where
Did they
everybody was
have-
walking around with their...
Right.
Corrugated concrete walls at that time? 'Cause
There were still checkpoints and everything,
Yeah.
all that,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Which is what they have now. And you can, it's so obvious crossing in, everybody's fighting and mad, and you walk out, and everybody kind of normal.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's true.
Palestinians are.
It's true, but you can see
Hostile
here,
group.
you can see Palestine, full Palestinian control is literally just that little strip. That's all they got. Now, the West Bank is shared. See, partial Palestinian control, and you can see how the West Bank has all these Israeli settlements.
That's my question. What's this business about these settlements and the Jews trying to move into this land? They just do it and nobody stops them? Because that's been a big contention, is this colonization thing.
Well, the issue, I think, goes back to there's a lot of interaction and a lot of good interaction between Israelis and Palestinians.
I understand that.
Where it gets into trouble is where you've got this Muslim tension.
Mm-hmm.
Which basically says we want this back. It's our land. You're invaders, and you need to be out of here. So, from what we gather with this, as long as everybody is doing their thing, Palestinians and Jews work together. There's not a built-in tension between a Palestinian and a Jew, versus what's happening here, which is where you've got Hamas that has activated, specifically here in the Gaza Strip. Hamas has very much activated and said, if you are a Muslim, you need to hate the Jews. You need to hate them. You need to be anti-Jews, and therefore we can no longer just coexist together.
So you're gonna define Hamas, right?
I'm going to define Hamas, yes. Yep. But I wanted you to see this, and now I wanted to give you a visual, because even for me, I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy, okay? So we look at this, and scale, we don't have a way of visualizing scale, okay? So I want you to see this area that is being fought over, and I want you to understand the scale of it. You ready? That's the state of Texas. So you can see, I mean, even like this Gaza Strip is not a very big area. The land of Israel is not very big. You can put, I mean, this is all the way from the Mediterranean Sea past Babylon. So this would be modern day Iraq over here. This is into Iran. And that's just the state of Texas. Now granted, I understand the state of Texas is not a small state, but the state of Texas is one state in America. This is not a big area. All of this is happening in a very small, condensed place.
I think for us to understand it better, you'd have to overlay Michigan and Ohio on there.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 miles across Texas.
You know what? I have another map. In fact, I just saw this one. I thought, well, that's good for understanding. But I have another map because I forget how many Israels will fit into Michigan. The entire land of Israel. I think there's like 4 or 5 Israels that fit in the state of Michigan. So it is not a big area.
Just in the lower peninsula.
Just in the lower peninsula. Yes.
That doesn't count the UP. Size of
Yes.
counties.
Yeah. It's just
Take the lakeshore counties, and that's Israel.
yes.
Maybe from the border up to
Yeah.
Huntington or Traverse
Yeah.
City.
It is not big. It's not big.
11.
11? Really? 11 Israels can fit in Michigan? Wow. Thank you, Google.
So you want to walk.
No, you
Oh, yeah.
He just has no.
So the Gaza Strip, I wrote some things down. So the Gaza Strip is a 141 square mile Palestinian enclave located near Israel's southwestern tip. 141 square miles. That's not very big. How big is Kent County? You want to Google that one? How many square miles is Kent County?
24 by 30.
24 by 30? Almost there. Yeah,
872 miles.
Square miles.
872 square miles. Gaza Strip is 141.
No kidding. You got too
So,
many people
and
there.
they got 2 million people living in there. Yeah. Its name is derived from the ancient city of Gaza, which was the largest city in the territory, which was a Philistine city back in the day. Okay? So, now my question is, what is Hamas? All right? That's the next question. So what is Hamas? Let me give you some information. Hamas, or, I'm going to butcher it, Harakat al-Mukawama al-Islamiyah.
Perfect. Right.
That's what I thought. I nailed it, didn't I? It is a Sunni Islamist terrorist organization. So you guys know the Sunnis and the Shiites are the two main branches. This is a Sunni Islamist terrorist organization that operates as the de facto leader of the Gaza Strip. It was founded in 1988 during the first Intifada, if you've heard that word before. It's the first Intifada as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood.
They were militants.
Yes. Hamas has set 2 long-term goals articulated in its charter. The end of the Jewish state. In the charter, the Jewish state must end, and that state was created in 1947, or 1948, actually. So 1948 is when the state of Israel was created. Hamas says, our charter is to end the Jewish state. Number 2, and the creation of an Islamic state from the Jordan River. We'll go back here. An Islamic state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Now, do you see how this could create some tension?
Sir,
I have
Yes.
a question.
Yeah.
So are Palestinians mostly Muslim people?
Mostly.
Mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, a lot of the Palestinians are Muslim, but there's also many Palestinian Christians, just as there are Jewish Christians. I mean, they're all living in this area, interspersed and working together until they're not. So when you bring an organization like Hamas in that says our stated goal is to eradicate you, is to have no more state of Israel and to make this area a Muslim area, you can see why there would be tension. Okay?
Pastor,
Yeah.
how did Hamas get in there? Did they just take over, or were they given permission? How did they even get in there?
Well, is that what you're going to ask, Rose? Something like that?
Well, I understood that Hamas was voted in, so why would they do that?
Okay. There were I was doing a lot of reading, okay? A lot of reading getting ready for all this. And from what I gathered, Hamas it activates people, okay? You know, I mean, if you think about the Islam, you know, so many have said it's a religion of peace. It's a religion of peace. And I think that is a very thinly veiled lie, personally. I think at its core, it is set out against other religions, and that's okay in the sense of that Christianity is exclusive. Christianity is exclusive. Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." So to have a religion that's exclusive is understandable. But in Christianity, it's love your brothers. It's love the world to Jesus. Whereas, as has been said oftentimes, within Islam, there is it basically get rid of the infidel is part of their Bible or their Quran. It's part of it. And so I know that there are those who play it down, you know, just like maybe there are those in Christianity who may try to amp it up, and those who have used the Bible to explain why we kill abortionists. You know, they've tried to use the Bible to twist it and turn it. So I know there are those within Islam who don't hold to kill all the infidels around. But when you look at it at its core, it's a religion that says everybody else needs to be away and get rid of them. So when you bring these extremists in, like a Hamas, you know, it's really interesting even what's happening in our prisons here in America. Islam is making a huge push even within prisons. I was reading something about that. And the reason why is because they're coming along and they're appealing to these men who feel like who they're not being paid attention to, and they're not being cared about and everything, and the culture seems to be more feminine as we go, and therefore they're like, you need to be activated to do this. And so men, they're like, yeah, we men should be able to do this, and men are just surrounding going to Islam. So you can see how it finds its way in, and gradually it just keeps going up. So to go back to Palestine, these groups, think about a group that if you've got 2 million people living in a 141 square mile area, and you don't have a lot of resources and a lot of things, now you get a group who comes along who has the backing of a very famous country. Anybody know who is backing Hamas? It's Iran.
A lot of money.
And there's a lot of money. In fact, I forget what year it was, 2007, or I think that's what it was. They said that Iran gave Hamas $100 million that year to be able to do the things they're doing. So if you're here and you're going around and you're doing good for the people and you're bringing a sense of national pride, we should be able to do this. Think Hitler back in World War II. How many people followed after that nut job? You know, why? Because he promised a better place, and we're going to get to do that we are just, you know, that we are the just that we are due. We're going to get all these things. And people followed him en masse, even good people. They're like this national pride. And so I'm not surprised that Palestine did this, but it is very sad. It is very sad.
We have to consider that they are so desperate. They're poor. They're very, very poor, and they're desperate. They're grasping at straws. And so for somebody to move in like this and just take over was pretty easy to do.
Yes. Yeah. Mohammed Deef. Its more immediate goal is the liberation of Palestine and the return of the Palestinian people. So that's their stated goals. Get rid of Israel, get rid of the state of Israel, make it a Muslim place. But in the meantime, we just need to liberate Palestine. We want all Jews out of here, which is interesting because this is a fully controlled Palestinian area. But also they said we want the return of the Palestinian people to the land. They feel they're due this. Mohammed Deef, the head of Hamas's military wing, which is called the Qassam Brigades, Qassam Brigades, said in a recorded message on October 7th that the killings on October 7th was in response to what he called the desecration of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, you know what the Al-Aqsa Mosque is? The Al-Aqsa, okay, so on Temple Mount, there's no way we're about done.
No.
So on Temple Mount, the Temple Mount is kind of big like this. By the way, Temple Mount is about the size of 11 football fields. So it's a large area, okay?
And that's where Jesus gonna put his feet?
Well, there's a valley here, which comes like this, and this is called the Kidron Valley. And there is a mountain on the other side of the Kidron Valley. By the way, this mountain where the Temple Mount is called Mount Moriah. Over here, we have another mountain called Mount of Olives. There it is. Heard of the Mount of Olives before?
Yeah.
So when Jesus left the temple the night before he was betrayed, or the night of his betrayal, he went over to the Mount of Olives. So he left this area of city. He would walk over the Kidron Valley. He went over here, and that's where they would have found him. There's an olive grove over there in the Mount of Olives. But Jesus says, when I return, I'm going to return to the Mount of Olives. And it's there that he will touch back again. When he ascended, that's where he ascended from, in Acts chapter 1. But, so this Temple Mount, down here in the bottom corner, is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's what's down here in the bottom corner.
Dome of the Rock?
Dome of the Rock is up here.
Oh, okay.
This is the Dome of the Rock. Dome, we'll just call it that. So yeah.
Where's the Wailing Wall?
The Wailing Wall is right here.
Okay.
Outside that, yeah. So the Jews, they come here, and this would be is a big courtyard area right here. This is definitely not drawn to scale, but so this would be the Wailing Wall, or as the Jews call it, the Western Wall. Okay, so that's right in this area. Yeah, but the Al-Aqsa Mosque is this mosque. This is an active mosque. Nobody goes in here. Okay, the Dome of the Rock is a very sacred place. They don't have regular meetings in there. This is supposedly the site where Muhammad ascended. Okay, but interestingly enough, this is the site where they feel this is where the temple was. So that's why the Jews hate that this is here, because they feel it's not in the right place, or they feel that the Dome of the Rock is built right over where the temple used to be. Okay, so that's why there's so much tension in this. But the Al-Aqsa Mosque is it's an active mosque. Muslims go there for worship, whatever day they go. So Mohammed Deef says, we did all this because you desecrated that. All right. So I have this page and this, and we made it through page 1. I want to talk about land occupation. Who has the right to the land? That's what I want to talk about. Because that's the biggest question. Does Hamas, or does Palestine have more of a right to the land than the nation of Israel does? Because that's the biggest question. You know, should the Palestinians be allowed to kick the Jews out? Should the Jews kick the Palestinians out? What should we do? Well, we're going to have to do that next week, unfortunately. I wanted to do that this week. We may have to come back a different time and do more of these classes. Yes, Paula?
Before we go, you pointed out Iraq.
Yes.
My son-in-law, Gordy, has a granddaughter in Iraq in the Air Force. And just appreciate prayer for all of them.
They daily have sirens that go off,
Oh, yeah.
and, yeah, and we have a lot of military in Iraq.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this, here's another slide. So you can see right over here, this would be Iraq, right over, actually it's right in this area. You were in Mesopotamia, right there. We're going to talk about this next week when I'm going to emphasize the land of the Hittites up here in modern day Turkey. Okay? But we're going to see all this. This is what's known as the Fertile Crescent. This land has been fought over for millennia. Millennia, and it is still in the crosshairs of everything. But yes, so to go where you're at, this would be Iraq area right here, and then Iran is on this side. So Susa, remember the city of Susa back from Queen Esther? But yeah, so that would have been Iran. This would have been the Persian Empire. So here you have the Medes and the Persians. That was the Medes and the Persians. This would have been the Babylonians. The Assyrians are up here. Assyria, this would be the Assyrian army. You have the Hittites, the Syrians, the Egyptians down here. So all these biblical things, this is all right in this particular area. And it's a hotbed for conflict. That's for sure. Yes, Dwayne.
It's worth mentioning, too, that prior to 1948, the Palestinians were not a self-determining people with their own state.
Right.
The British were in, I believe, prior to that, the Ottoman Turks. And
yeah, the Ottomans, they controlled this area from the 1500s up to the 1900s.
Till the end of World War I.
Yeah, till the end of World War I. But the problem with the Ottomans was they sided with Germany in World War I. Well, we know what happened to Germany. So they lost. The British came down and controlled this. Well, the British were in control of of this entire land until 1948, when
Get rid of it quick enough.
yeah, exactly, exactly. There was all sorts of tension there. So, any questions that you want me to address for next week? There's a lot of stuff I still want to talk about, but yes, Rose.
This isn't for next week.
Oh.
Are Zionists real Jews, or do they just come into the
Okay,
Jewish?
good question. I can answer that quickly. Zionism, by definition, okay. So you see, remember what we talked about with Hamas? How they want the Jews to be kicked out, the end of the Jewish state, and creation of an Islamic state. Zionism says we want the Jewish nation to be a self-determined people, and two, we want them to have their land. Okay? So Zionism is a belief that says the Jews should have their property back and should be a self-determined state.
More political.
So it's more political. So you don't necessarily have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. Okay? So those of us who support Israel, who, to be able to have their land or whatever else, we would be called Zionists. Just by definition, okay? So to be an anti-Zionist would be somebody who says, no, I don't believe Israel should be a self-determined state, or they shouldn't have their land back. Does that make sense? Yeah. There is a really, really good podcast I would recommend. A guy by the name of Craig McDonald. Some of you are familiar with him, Craig McDonald. He did a really interesting podcast on Zionism. He does a blog, or I guess it's a video, audio.
Alphabet soup.
Yeah, a podcast. There it is, and he calls it Alphabet Soup. So if you go on Spotify or Apple, whatever, you can just search for Alphabet Soup. I put in Alphabet Soup and I put McDonald, MacDonald, because there's a couple different alphabet soups out there. But what he does is he picks a letter and he goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so just recently he did for Z, he did Zionism. He did a 2-podcast episode, which was fascinating. I thought he did a really good job with it. So maybe go on, like I said, look for Alphabet Soup, McDonald, and then look for, it's within the last couple months that he did. It was really good. So, all right, I will, let's just thank the Lord for our time. God, I thank you for your word. I thank you for the truth that we are able to see, and I know we didn't get much into what the Bible says about the Jewish people, but I look forward to next week with this. But I do know, God, that there's a lot of conflict in the world. I'm so grateful that we live where we do. We don't worry on a daily basis if rockets going to fly into our town, or we don't worry about mostly we don't worry about having some suicide bomber go and detonate or something. God, we live in such a safe place. And so I think it's hard for us to grasp the fear and the danger that people live in on a daily basis in other parts of the world. And so God, I do pray for peace in Israel. I do pray that you would bring an end to this war. I know that the nation of Israel wants nothing more than to get Hamas off of their back and out of this area. And God, I think for the Palestinians, they want that too. They just don't know how to go about it. So Lord, I guess protect whoever is needed to be protected over there, but bring an end to the conflict if you so choose. But thank you for your word. I thank you for the things that we have that keeps us grounded, especially understanding our Bible dispensationally, and it makes a difference. And as we talk about that next week, I pray that it gives a sense of calm. But we love you and thank you for this time that we've had to be together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.